can't actually see the mountains, I can't see you too well. Again, watching the mountain there though. Ken joining us the starts flag coming up very shortly indeed. It's being prepared down here on the start line.
We're at Cadwell, the third race meeting of our season, and this is going to be the first time I've ever ridden my bike around this circuit. So right now it is Saturday afternoon. Been here yesterday, Friday, but it rained all day, so we didn't go out because we knew it was going to be a dry weekend, so not much point splashing around. So my first run around here on that bike was qualifying this morning, and baptism of fire as always. Riding the super bike around Cadwell after riding a load of adventure bikes this week, and the bike felt okay. I've run through the things we've done to it since Snetterton. Qualified 13th, not great but not bad, and just been out for a race now, finished 8th, so we're inching towards where we need to be. My best time at the moment is only 1:35. My best ever around here is 31, so I've got a lot of time to find, but I've got a few little interesting nuggets to show you. So as always, Bob's been looking after the bike in between races, and it looks absolutely amazing. Bike's more or less the same. Bob keeps finding titanium bolts to put on it, so we've got some nice titanium bolts down there in the with the gear shifter, and new we've got easy grip tank pads, so they're used a lot of BSB, and they help you support yourself under hard braking. They're really grippy, so they help a little bit, so I'll recommend those. Then we come to the suspension. So the BMW is quite strange that it's got a full floater rear end, and it runs a very light spring, and it's got a full floater linkage. It doesn't really act like you'd expect, which has caused us a few problems along the way. But those very nice people at K-Tech have given me some advice, and I'm running the same kind of springs, relatively same ride heights as the super stock boys, but where my rear shock was differing was that I hardly ran any preload because I was trying to find sag and not much damping. So now, with their help, I've put a lot of preload on, which kind of goes against what I thought it should be, because it was giving it less sag, but in actual fact it's giving the tyre more bite when you get on the throttle. So that's really worked well. And the same goes with the forks. So I had very little preload and relatively strong damping, and we've gone completely the other way with much more preload and much less damping. And the bike now kind of sits taller on its feet, and it's more agile, and it's plusher. So that's really good. And looking at the data numbers are better as well, which I'll show you in a minute. And talking of data, at Snetterton I was having a massive problem with the bike basically ploughing on through corners when I was leaning it over. I couldn't get it turned, and we tried all different sorts of things with the front end and the suspension settings and all sorts, and nothing was helping until those very nice people at Fortis Racing, who are BMW race support, had a look at my data trace and immediately saw something amiss, which I'll show you on the laptop now. So here we go. This bunch of squiggles is a data trace from one of the laps at Snetterton when I was having the problem. And what you're looking at here, so for example, this is the track, this is turn 1, say. This is where we are at turn 1-ish. So this is the start finish straight. That's the speed and the revs and the throttle, and they're all climbing because you're flat out, and then suddenly when it's time to brake, you're completely off the throttle, which is the yellow line, and then you stay off the throttle through the corner, and then you start to feed it on. The blue line is the throttle butterflies, because this is ride by wire, so what you do with your hand doesn't necessarily equate to what happens with the throttle bodies. So the blue line comes down, then to stop the bike locking up going into a corner and doing more freewheeling, it's giving you engine braking control. So you can see here it's not completely closing the throttle butterflies. These are the blips to get down from 5th to 3rd, but then the throttle butterflies stay on for a long time into the corner. And what that feels like on the bike is when you've got the throttle closed, the bike's just scrubbing straight on. So this was the problem, and you can see in all the corners here, in a more or less extent, I've got much too much throttle going into the corners even when my throttle grip is closed. Change every single parameter you can think of, really, from fueling to traction control, wheelie control, pit lane limiter, you name it. You can muck about with it. You can also change the engine braking control, and there's a little tick box here which is closed loop activation, and that was ticked before, and that's what made the bike do funny things. So they said to me, if you just untick that box, download this map back into the bike, and then hey presto, it worked. So that was another little problem off the list. So now with that closed loop engine braking switched off, you can see a big difference. So this is what happens at the end of Park Straight at Cadwell. Off the throttle, you've got a little bit of engine braking as you blip through the gears, but basically the throttle butterflies match what you're doing with the throttle, so the bike is much more consistent. Another thing Adam from Fortis has told me, a way of getting easy speed and easy lap time is basically to rev it more. So I'm probably only taking it just past 13, and this bike revs to 14,600. So he basically says you've got to rip the ear off it, and that is difficult for me. So I ride lots of different bikes with my day job, and I'm pretty kind on engines. I don't like to thrash them really, so I'm just going to have to learn to be really violent with this one. And the other thing he told me was about the traction control. So basically I'm not using the traction control enough. I'm kind of riding up to the edge of it rather than leaning on it. So I'm on level 2 traction control. He suggested just ramping it right up to get used to the feeling of riding against the traction control, and once I get used to that feeling, then I can start to turn the traction control down, and then I'll be going faster. So that is another thing to try. So there you have it. We're just working our way through all the little teething problems and the learning curve of riding a new bike. Luckily there's good people around to help us, because we wouldn't figure any of this lot out. If I was setting the suspension up by myself, I'd never think to do the things K-Tech suggested. I'd never think to go into the calibration kit to change the engine braking control. And I'm sure there's lots of other little secrets to be unlocked with the bike as well. But now it's basically at a point where it kind of feels normal, and the big weak link would definitely be me. So just a question of doing laps now. Like I said, this is the first time at Cadwell on this bike. I've literally just done 2 dry sessions on it, so there's still a long way to go. Saturday afternoon now, we've got 2 races tomorrow. I'll put the results at the end of this video. Hopefully everything goes okay, and then the next round will be our home round, if we can get in. It's always oversubscribed, at Brands GP.